In the quiet, isolated town of Pinewood, a ruthless bus driver named Jack terrorized the locals. With his massive vehicle, he bullied anyone who dared to stand in his way, believing he was unstoppable as he reigned over the roads with fear and intimidation. Jack reveled in his power, callously disregarding the safety and well-being of his passengers and fellow motorists. His reckless driving and aggressive behavior struck fear into the hearts of the townspeople, who felt helpless against his tyranny on the roads. But unbeknownst to Jack, his reign of terror was about to meet its match in the most unexpected way. A humble park ranger named Sarah, deeply connected to both the people and wild animals around her, was about to cross paths with the notorious bus driver. Sarah embodied true strength and justice, with a calm demeanor that belied her fierce resolve to protect her community and the natural world she held dear. Little did Jack know, but his reckless actions were about to set in motion a chain of events that would forever change the lives of everyone in Pinewood. Sarah's deep connection to the land and its creatures had been forged over years of dedicated service as a park ranger. She patrolled the vast wilderness surrounding Pinewood, ensuring the safety of both the human visitors and the diverse array of animals that called the park home. Among the creatures under Sarah's watchful eye was a magnificent bear, a powerful symbol of the untamed beauty and raw strength of the natural world. The bear roamed the dense forests, its presence a reminder of the delicate balance between humans and the wild. As Sarah made her daily rounds, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Reports had been coming in of a reckless bus driver endangering the lives of passengers and wildlife alike. Sarah knew she had to act, but little did she know that her path was about to collide with Jack's in a way that would test her resolve like never before. On a fateful morning, Jack's reckless driving nearly caused a devastating accident. As he sped down the narrow mountain road, he swerved to avoid a small car, narrowly missing it but sending the occupants, a young mother and her child, into a state of shock and fear. Unbeknownst to Jack, the woman and child he had endangered were none other than Sarah's sister and nephew, who had been visiting Pinewood for a quiet weekend getaway. When Sarah learned of the incident, her calm demeanor gave way to a fierce determination to bring Jack to justice. As Sarah set out to confront the notorious bus driver, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. She knew that Jack's reign of terror had gone unchecked for far too long, and that it would take more than a stern warning to set him straight. Little did she know that the key to Jack's downfall lay not in human intervention, but in the powerful forces of nature itself. As Sarah made her way towards the bus depot, her mind raced with thoughts of how to confront Jack. She knew that he was a formidable opponent, with a quick temper and a penchant for violence. But Sarah also knew that she had the strength of her convictions on her side, and the support of a community that had grown weary of living in fear. Meanwhile, Jack was reveling in his latest act of reckless endangerment, bragging to his fellow drivers about how he had shown that little car who's boss. He had no idea that his actions had set in motion a chain of events that would soon bring his world crashing down around him. As Sarah arrived at the depot, she steeled herself for the confrontation to come. She knew that she would need all of her courage and resolve to face down Jack and his reign of terror. But little did she know that the most powerful ally in her fight for justice was already making its way towards them, in the form of a massive, majestic bear. As Sarah approached the bus depot, she couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous was about to happen. The air seemed to crackle with tension, as if the very fabric of the universe was holding its breath in anticipation. Jack, meanwhile, was oblivious to the gathering storm. He lounged in the driver's seat of his bus, smoking a cigarette and flipping through a magazine, secure in his belief that he was untouchable. But then, without warning, a massive shape emerged from the tree-line at the edge of the depot. It was the bear, drawn by some inexplicable force to the scene of the impending confrontation. Sarah froze, her eyes locked on the magnificent creature. She had seen bears before, of course, but never one so large, so powerful. It seemed to radiate an aura of ancient wisdom and primal strength, as if it were a living embodiment of the untamed wilderness. As the bear lumbered towards the bus depot, Sarah knew that the moment of truth had arrived. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and marched towards Jack, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Jack looked up from his magazine, annoyed at the interruption. He had just gotten to the good part of the article he was reading, and he didn't appreciate being disturbed. But then he saw Sarah striding towards him, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. He sat up straighter, suddenly on alert. He had never seen the park ranger look so intense before. "What do you want?" he growled, trying to sound intimidating, but even he could hear the note of uncertainty in his voice. Sarah didn't flinch. She planted herself in front of Jack, her gaze never wavering. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm but firm, "about your reckless driving and the danger you're putting everyone in." Jack scoffed. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, looking away. "I'm just doing my job, getting people where they need to go." Sarah shook her head. "No, Jack, you're putting lives at risk, and it has to stop. Your actions have consequences, and it's time you faced up to them." Jack's face reddened with anger. He stood up, towering over Sarah. "You don't tell me what to do," he snarled. "I'm in charge here, and I'll drive however I damn well please." But before Sarah could respond, a deafening roar split the air. Both she and Jack turned to see the bear, now just a few feet away, its massive head lowered in a clear sign of aggression. Jack's eyes widened in fear. He stumbled backwards, tripping over his own feet in his haste to get away. Sarah, on the other hand, stood her ground, her gaze locked with the bear's. For a long, tense moment, the three of them remained frozen in place, the air thick with tension. Then, slowly, carefully, Sarah began to speak. "Easy now," Sarah said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't want any trouble." The bear let out a low, rumbling growl, its eyes never leaving Sarah's face. Behind her, Jack was whimpering in fear, his bravado completely evaporated in the face of the massive creature. Sarah took a step forward, her hands held out in a gesture of peace. "I know you're scared," she said, her words directed as much at Jack as at the bear. "But we can all walk away from this, if we just stay calm." The bear huffed, its breath hot against Sarah's face. She could see the intelligence in its eyes, the awareness of the delicate balance between humans and nature. "You have a choice, Jack," Sarah said, still facing the bear but speaking over her shoulder. "You can continue down this path of recklessness and destruction, or you can choose to be a part of something greater, something that respects the world around us and the lives of everyone in it." For a long moment, the only sound was the bear's heavy breathing and the distant chirping of birds. Then, slowly, Jack stepped forward, his face pale and his hands shaking. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely audible. "I never meant to hurt anyone." Sarah nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I know," she said, "but now you have a chance to make things right." The bear, as if sensing the change in the air, took a step back. It regarded Sarah and Jack for a moment longer, then turned and lumbered back into the forest, its massive form quickly disappearing among the trees. Sarah let out a long, slow breath. She turned to face Jack, her expression serious but not unkind. "This is just the beginning," she said. "You have a long road ahead of you, but you don't have to walk it alone. The community is here for you, if you're willing to let us help." Jack nodded, his eyes filled with a newfound resolve. "I'm ready," he said. "Let's do this." In the days that followed, word of Sarah's encounter with the bear and her confrontation with Jack spread quickly through the town of Pinewood. People whispered in hushed tones about the park ranger's bravery and the way she had stood up to the notorious bus driver without fear. But Sarah herself remained humble, insisting that she had only done what needed to be done. She knew that the real work was just beginning, and that it would take the entire community coming together to truly bring about change. Jack, for his part, seemed genuinely remorseful for his past actions. He started attending anger management classes and even volunteered to help with a local wildlife conservation project. Sarah watched his progress with a mixture of pride and caution. She knew that change didn't happen overnight, and that Jack would need ongoing support and guidance to truly turn his life around. But she also knew that his story was just one small part of a much larger tapestry. The bear's appearance had been a powerful symbol, a reminder of the interconnectedness of all living things and the importance of treating the natural world with respect. Sarah began to work more closely with the community, organizing meetings and events to bring people together and foster a sense of unity and purpose. She knew that it would take time, but she believed that by working together, they could create a better future for everyone. As the weeks turned into months, the town of Pinewood began to undergo a remarkable transformation. People who had once been isolated and afraid started coming together, working side by side on projects that benefited the entire community. Jack became a regular fixture at these gatherings, his once intimidating presence now a source of comfort and inspiration to those around him. He shared his story openly, admitting to his past mistakes and the long journey he had undertaken to become a better person. Sarah watched it all with a sense of quiet satisfaction. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that they were on the right path. One day, as she was walking through the park, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. She turned to see the bear, standing at the edge of the tree-line, its gaze fixed on her. For a moment, the two of them simply stared at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Then, with a gentle huff, the bear turned and disappeared back into the forest. Sarah smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. She knew that the bear would always be there, watching over them, a reminder of the wild beauty and untamed strength that existed just beyond the boundaries of their little town. And she knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, the people of Pinewood would face them together, united by a common purpose and a shared love for the land and each other. As the months passed, the changes in Pinewood became more and more apparent. The once quiet streets were now filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, as neighbors stopped to chat and catch up with one another. The community gardens that Sarah had helped establish were thriving, with people of all ages coming together to plant and tend to the vegetables and flowers. The produce was shared freely among the townspeople, a tangible reminder of the abundance that could be created through cooperation and hard work. Even the local school had undergone a transformation, with teachers and students alike embracing a new curriculum that emphasized environmental stewardship and social responsibility. The children learned about the interconnectedness of all living things and the importance of treating the earth and each other with kindness and respect. Jack had become a beloved figure in the community, his story of redemption and growth inspiring others to face their own challenges with courage and determination. He still drove the bus, but now he did so with a newfound sense of purpose, using his position to bring people together and foster a sense of community. Sarah watched it all with a deep sense of pride and gratitude. She knew that the journey was far from over, but she also knew that they had already come so far. The town of Pinewood had been transformed, not just physically but spiritually, and she knew that the ripple effects of that transformation would continue to spread outward, touching lives far beyond their little corner of the world. As the one-year anniversary of Sarah's confrontation with Jack and the bear approached, the town of Pinewood was buzzing with excitement. Plans were underway for a grand celebration, a chance to come together and reflect on all that had been accomplished in the past year. Sarah found herself at the center of the preparations, working tirelessly to ensure that every detail was just right. She wanted the event to be a true reflection of the community's spirit, a testament to the power of unity and hope. On the day of the celebration, the town square was filled with people from all walks of life. Families and friends mingled together, sharing stories and laughter as they enjoyed the festivities. At the center of it all stood Jack, his once fearsome presence now a source of warmth and comfort. He had been asked to give a speech, and as he stepped up to the podium, a hush fell over the crowd. "I stand before you today as a changed man," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "A year ago, I was lost, consumed by anger and fear. But thanks to the courage and compassion of one extraordinary woman, I was given a second chance." He paused, his gaze finding Sarah's in the crowd. "Sarah showed me that true strength comes not from intimidation or violence, but from empathy and understanding. She taught me that every living thing has value, and that by working together, we can create a world that is kinder, more just, and more beautiful than we ever thought possible." As Jack spoke, Sarah felt a sense of deep gratitude and humility wash over her. She knew that the journey had been a collective one, that the transformation of Pinewood had been the result of countless small acts of kindness and courage. And as she looked out over the sea of faces before her, she knew that the true power of their community lay not in any one individual, but in the unbreakable bonds that held them all together. As the celebration drew to a close, Sarah found herself walking alone through the park, lost in thought. The past year had been a whirlwind of activity and emotion, and she knew that there was still much work to be done. But as she made her way deeper into the woods, she couldn't help but feel a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. The forest had always been a source of solace for her, a place where she could find clarity and purpose. Suddenly, she heard a rustling in the underbrush, and she turned to see the bear emerge from the treeline. It regarded her calmly, its dark eyes filled with a deep intelligence and understanding. Sarah stood still, her breath caught in her throat. She had encountered the bear many times over the past year, but each meeting still filled her with a sense of awe and reverence. As the bear approached, Sarah held out her hand, palm up, in a gesture of trust and friendship. The bear sniffed at her fingers, its warm breath tickling her skin. And then, without warning, the bear reared up on its hind legs, its massive form towering over her. Sarah's heart raced, but she held her ground, knowing that the bear meant her no harm. For a long moment, the two of them stood there, locked in a silent communion. And then, with a gentle huff, the bear dropped back down to all fours and turned to lumber back into the forest. Sarah watched it go, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She knew that the bear was a symbol of the wild, untamed beauty that existed all around them, a reminder of the power and resilience of the natural world. And as she made her way back to the town, she knew that she would carry that symbol with her always, a source of strength and inspiration in the face of whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks and months that followed, Sarah continued to work tirelessly on behalf of her community. She organized cleanup efforts and conservation projects, bringing people together to care for the land and the creatures that called it home. She also worked closely with Jack and the other members of the town council, developing new initiatives and programs designed to promote sustainability and social responsibility. Together, they created a vision for a future that was brighter, more just, and more compassionate than anything they had ever known. And through it all, Sarah never lost sight of the lessons she had learned from her encounters with the bear. She knew that true strength came not from dominance or aggression, but from a deep respect for the interconnectedness of all living things. She also knew that change was possible, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The transformation of Pinewood had not happened overnight, but through the small, daily choices of countless individuals working together towards a common goal. As she walked through the town, Sarah could see the fruits of their labors everywhere she looked. The streets were cleaner, the air was fresher, and the people were more connected than ever before. And though she knew that there would always be challenges and obstacles to overcome, Sarah also knew that they had the strength and resilience to face them head-on. They had proven time and again that by coming together in a spirit of unity and compassion, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. As the sun began to set over the mountains, Sarah made her way back to the park, her heart filled with a sense of peace and purpose. She knew that the journey ahead would be long and difficult, but she also knew that she was not alone. She had the support of her community, the wisdom of the bear, and the unshakable conviction that a better world was possible. And with those things by her side, she knew that anything was possible. Years passed, and the town of Pinewood continued to thrive. The seeds of change that had been planted in those early days had taken root and flourished, transforming the community in ways that few could have imagined. Sarah remained at the heart of it all, a constant presence in the lives of those around her. She had grown older and wiser, but her passion and commitment had never wavered. She still walked the trails of the park, communing with the animals and the land that had taught her so much. And though the bear had long since passed on, its spirit remained a constant presence in her life, guiding her always towards a path of compassion and understanding. As she sat by the banks of the river one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Sarah reflected on all that had happened. She thought of Jack and the incredible journey he had undertaken to become the man he was today. She thought of the countless others whose lives had been touched by the transformation of Pinewood, and the ripple effects that had spread outward from their little town to the wider world. And she thought of the bear and the powerful lesson it had taught her about the true nature of strength and resilience. She knew that its spirit would live on forever, a symbol of the wild, untamed beauty that existed all around them, waiting always to be discovered by those with the courage to seek it out. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Sarah closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the peace and contentment that came from a life well lived. She knew that the journey was far from over, that there would always be new challenges and obstacles to overcome. But she also knew that she was ready for whatever lay ahead. She had the strength of her convictions, the love of her community, and the unshakable belief that a better world was always possible, if only they had the courage to reach for it. And with that knowledge burning bright within her, Sarah stood up and made her way back to the town, ready to face the future with an open heart and a spirit of hope that could never be extinguished. As Sarah made her way back into town that evening, the streets were quiet but alive with a gentle warmth that had become characteristic of Pinewood. The streetlights cast a soft glow on the newly planted trees that lined the main avenue, another of the community's recent initiatives to increase the urban canopy. She paused at the community center, now a vibrant hub of activity even in the evening hours. Through the windows, she could see Jack leading a youth mentorship program, something he had started 2 years ago. The sight brought a smile to her face as she remembered how far he had come from those days of anger and reckless driving. Inside, teenagers gathered around tables, working on various environmental projects. Some were designing wildlife corridors, others were planning upcoming conservation events. Jack moved between the groups, offering guidance and encouragement, his once intimidating presence now a source of strength and wisdom for the younger generation. "Sarah," Jack called out when he noticed her. "Come in. The kids are working on something special." She entered the warm space, immediately surrounded by eager young faces. One of them, a girl named Maya, rushed forward with a detailed proposal in her hands. "We've been researching the old migration patterns," Maya explained, spreading out a map on the table. "We think we've found a way to restore the ancient pathway that the bears used to follow through the valley." Sarah's heart swelled with pride as she examined their work. These children had grown up with a different understanding of the world than their parents had. They saw themselves as guardians of the natural world rather than its masters. The proposal was thorough, considering both wildlife needs and human safety. It included corridors of protected land, educational signage for hikers, and designated viewing areas where people could safely observe wildlife from a distance. Most importantly, it demonstrated an understanding of the delicate balance between human development and natural preservation. "This is excellent work," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've thought of everything." Jack placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "These kids, they remind me of you, Sarah. They have that same fire, that same determination to make things right." As they discussed the proposal, Sarah's mind drifted back to that fateful day with the bear. She had learned later that the bear had been known to local indigenous people as the guardian of the valley, a spirit that appeared in times of great change. Whether that was true or not, its appearance had certainly marked the beginning of a transformation that went far beyond anything she could have imagined. The meeting ran late into the evening, and when Sarah finally stepped out into the night air, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The work they had begun would continue long after she was gone, carried forward by these passionate young people who understood the importance of maintaining harmony between the human and natural worlds. The next morning, Sarah woke early to the sound of birdsong. She had always been an early riser, but these days she found herself increasingly drawn to the quiet hours of dawn. As she walked through her garden, now a certified wildlife habitat, she noticed fresh bear tracks in the soft earth near her compost bin. Though it wasn't the same bear from all those years ago, the local bear population had indeed returned to healthy numbers, thanks to the community's conservation efforts. They now lived in relative harmony with the town, their presence a reminder of the wild heart that still beat at the center of their community. Sarah followed the tracks to the edge of her property, where they disappeared into the underbrush. She smiled, remembering how fears had once dominated the town's relationship with wildlife. Now, thanks to education and understanding, the community saw these creatures as neighbors rather than threats. Later that day, she attended a town council meeting where the youth group presented their migration corridor proposal. The council chamber was packed, with people standing along the walls to hear the presentation. Maya and her friends stood confidently at the podium, their voices clear and passionate as they outlined their vision. As Sarah watched from her seat, she noticed something remarkable about the audience. The faces before her represented every aspect of their community. Longtime residents and newcomers, young and old, people from all walks of life. They were united in their attention, their shared commitment to maintaining the delicate balance they had worked so hard to achieve. The council voted unanimously to approve the proposal, and the chamber erupted in applause. Jack, who now served as the council's environmental liaison, beamed with pride at his young protégés. Sarah caught his eye across the room, and they shared a knowing look. This was exactly what they had hoped for all those years ago. After the meeting, the celebration spilled out onto the street. Someone had set up tables with local food and drink, and music filled the air. Sarah found herself surrounded by people sharing stories and memories of how far they'd come. An elderly woman approached her, tears in her eyes. "I remember when this town was dying," she said, taking Sarah's hands in her own. "When people were afraid to walk the streets, when nobody trusted their neighbors. Look at us now." Indeed, Pinewood had become a model for other communities struggling to find balance between development and conservation. Delegations from other towns frequently visited to learn from their experience, and Sarah often found herself sharing the story of the bear and the bus driver, though some found it hard to believe. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town square, Sarah made her way to her favorite spot on the edge of town. It was a simple wooden bench overlooking the valley, placed there in memory of the bear that had changed everything. She sat there for a long while, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to deep blue. In the distance, she could hear the sounds of the celebration continuing in town, but here at the edge of the wilderness, everything was peaceful. A rustle in the bushes caught her attention, and she turned to see a young bear emerging from the forest. It regarded her with curious eyes, showing no fear but maintaining a respectful distance. Sarah remained still, honored by its trust. For a moment, she could have sworn she saw a flash of recognition in its eyes, as if some part of that first bear's spirit lived on in all of them. The young bear huffed softly, then turned and disappeared back into the forest, leaving Sarah with a sense of completion. She knew then that her work, while not finished, had taken root in a way that would outlast her. The story of Pinewood, of transformation, redemption, and harmony, would continue to unfold long after she was gone, carried forward by each new generation that chose to embrace the delicate balance between civilization and wilderness. As she walked back to town under the emerging stars, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. The path ahead was clear, not just for her but for all of them. They would continue to face challenges, to learn and grow, to make mistakes and find solutions. But they would do it together, guided by the wisdom they had gained and the spirit of the bear that had shown them the way. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for, the chance to leave the world a little better than they found it, and the hope that others would carry that work forward into the future. End of the story.